Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 13 game Major League Baseball slate. It is an absolutely massive slate, so I am going to be a little bit picky about how I do rosters today. There's just too much variance today, so you definitely want to play light on the slate. But before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel a lot. So I am going to get into pitchers here in a minute, but I'm actually going to go into the bats first today and the stacks just because I want to get to the pitchers last on this one. With that said, I do have some core plays stuck around the lineup here with Burns, uh, Travis d'Arnaud, Paredes, Buxton, and Hop. Now, all these guys can definitely fit in here, but you don't have to use any of these guys. There's going to be a ton of different ways you can do things today with all this. We do have one weather issue potentially in Tampa Bay White Sox game, so do keep that in mind here. This game could have some risk, and that would affect Eflin and Flexen. So do keep that in mind. I also had Paredes here, so it could affect that as well. So we'll have to look for that information before the lock, hopefully, which hopefully we'll get. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into our catchers first. We're going to start with our bats today, and then move into our pitchers after our stacks. So we'll start with our catchers. Travis d'Arnaud is the top overall option. He's been absolutely phenomenal lately, and he draws really good metrics for this one. He didn't start the last game, but he should be starting today, and if that's the case, then he'll have a lot of upside in this matchup. It's a tough matchup against Cleveland, but I think he is in a great spot from a batting perspective, and he's been playing very well. A good alternative to him is Jeffers for Minnesota. Now, Jeffers really does jump off the page today as a top tier option. Has a lot of home run upside, has a lot of everything. So he looks like a solid play on this slate. He's been pretty good so far this season, and he's definitely a good option. Two alternatives would be Rutschman and William Contreras for Milwaukee. Both these guys have a lot of home run potential today, and that's why I'm going to look at them. Though they're pretty expensive and going to be somewhat hard to roster, especially if you have to pay up for other pitchers. Looking at first base, we are going to start with Otani and Freeman. Now, these are the top overall guys. However, they are extremely expensive and can be hard to roster. The Dodgers are not a must play by any stretch of imagination on the slate. There's a lot of teams you can stack up today. So you could definitely find ways to go cheaper here, though Otani, Harper, Freeman, and Vlad Jr. all look very good. But some value plays here would be Lamont Wade Jr. Let's see for San Francisco. He's nice and cheap. He plays this position or in the outfield, and he looks like a really solid option on the slate, assuming he draws a start. I do like San Francisco some today, so he's definitely a top tier option from that perspective. If you go with the stack of them too. And then Encarnacion Strand for Cincinnati. He's kind of a one off for Cincinnati today. He looks really good though, and he's one of the few guys on the Reds that have a lot of potential on the slate. Maybe in the second base, we do like a lot of Marcus Simeon. He has been pretty solid so far this season, though he needs to hit more home runs, but I do like his potential to hit one today. Ozzy Albies should be back today, potentially. He was on the 10-day DL. It looks like he was ramping up the last few days to be back today, so if he is in the starting lineup today, he'll be somebody I would definitely consider here. We have a lot of guys that we can consider as good options here. One of them being Luis Urias for Miami. He is really ramping up his hitting the last few games. I like his potential here. Not a home run hitter, but he definitely gets a lot of potential from just a pure fantasy perspective. Hoarder for the Cubs also looks really solid today. He's been pretty decent so far this season. No home runs yet, but he definitely draws good metrics for this game, and he's definitely worth a look. I also like India for Cincinnati as a kind of one-off. Again, I don't love Cincinnati today, but they do have a couple one-off guys that have good metrics for the matchup. Then we'll look at Rosario for, let's see, for Tampa Bay. I do like Tampa Bay today, but they are going to be hard to roster with their weather concerns. That said, Rosario has been fantastic to start the year, and I look for him to have another really solid game here against the White Sox, who are pretty lethargic in every way. And then Farmer from Minnesota. If you go with the Minnesota stack, which is definitely doable today, you can definitely try to utilize him. Now, he has been absolutely terrible to start the year. He's only had a couple hits, but I do think he's a great option on the slate, especially being dirt cheap and helps you pay up at other positions. And then another guy I really like today that's going to be under the radar is going to be Reyes for Boston. He's also struggled to start the year, but he has absolutely fantastic metrics, and something about him today just makes me think he's going to be absolutely solid. I'm not saying he's a core play. I'm just leaving it in there for as a reminder of that. Looking at third base, we do like Austin Riley an absolute ton today. He really looks solid on the slate and has a lot of potential. Isaac Paredes also has a lot of upside in this matchup. Again, Tampa Bay is somewhat risky as they could be in that weather situation, but he looks really good. Looking at Key Brian Hayes here, Hayes is a good one-off option for Pittsburgh as he draws incredible matchup metrics against Harrison. I also like Morel for the Chicago Cubs against Crawford. I think the Cubs are kind of sneaky today as a stackable team. They don't have a ton of guys I think I'd stack up, but they do have a few guys. And then Dahlbeck is a nice cheap option for Boston that you could roll in here at first or third base for that matter. Kyle Farmer uh, again can play here at third base. Reyes can also play here at third base, and then Miranda for Minnesota is kind of a good, interesting stackable option from that team. Moving to shortstop, we're going to look at Ella De La Cruz. Now, Ella De La Cruz is here because he has home run power and stolen base potential, and he's got both of those today. It is a riskier game since it's in Texas, but he definitely is one of the few guys on Cincinnati that really jump off the page. Looking at Gunnar Henderson for Baltimore, he draws a lot of good metrics for this game. He is very expensive, but he's definitely one of the top tier options on the slate. I really wanted to make one of them the core play for shortstop, but I couldn't really agree on which one. Not only that, but Corey Seager is also available here and has great metrics for this game as well. But I do have some good value plays here, and Willie Adames is one of them. He looks like a really solid play from Milwaukee against Gill. However, Gill is a pretty decent pitcher, so he's not a must play. Bo Bichette looks really good against the Dodgers, though I think this game will be pretty high scoring. Jose Caballero is a good play from Tampa Bay against Flexen, and he's also one of the cheaper options at this position. And then Rafaela for Boston. He might be one of my favorite plays at this position simply because he's dirt cheap and he has really good metrics for this game, and he's got a lot of upside in this matchup especially with his cheap price. Okay, so then moving to outfielders, our top four are going to be Acuna, Otani, Soto, and then um, let's see here. Oh, Chisholm Jr. Excuse me. Where is he? There he is at 4,900. Now, Chisholm really does jump off the page today as one of the best 5,000 plays at this position. I think he's a great play on the slate. He's definitely worth a look. But if we want to get into some value plays, we'll start with Buxton and Hop. These two jump off the page a lot today as great options, and they're typically one-off options in certain situations, and they're both looking really solid today. Unusual to see both of them pop at the same time. If you go with a Cincinnati stack, which I don't recommend that much today, but you could go another one-off way with Benson as his metrics are really good and he's nicely priced today. I also like Lee from San Francisco. He draws really good metrics for this game. He's priced pretty fairly. He's also hit the ball pretty well throughout the year so far, and he looks like a really solid option. Lamont Wade Jr. for San Francisco is going to be very interesting today with a as a potential stackable play. He's had some ups and downs throughout the year, but he's hitting the ball extremely well. He doesn't have a whole lot of home run upside, but especially at his own ballpark. But he definitely has some utility here. He's definitely worth a look, especially being dirt cheap and can play multiple positions. I also like Evan Carter for Texas. Now, Carter has looked pretty good for several games this year, and he has not disappointed in some of them. And I look at him today again as a good solid option. Ref Snyder for Boston is a nice dirt cheap play that you can definitely utilize. He hadn't played many games, but he's been absolutely fantastic in the games he has played, and that's not really a good indication that he's going to continue that today. But he has been absolutely phenomenal to start, and he's somebody I'm going to try to roster at least once or twice in my short amount of lineups. Wyatt Langford uh, also looks very interesting today for Texas. He draws some good metrics for this game. He hadn't hit a home run, but he definitely has some good upside. McCutcheon for Pittsburgh is a good one-off with Pittsburgh as he has some home run metrics, but he is a boomer bust play today. Same goes for De La Cruz uh, for 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 Miami. Excuse me. He's nice and cheap today, and he's got home run metrics, but he's definitely risky. Mullins for Baltimore would be a one-off option for Baltimore as he's got really good metrics for this game, but not a must-play by any stretch. And then Laureano is kind of a Hail Mary value play for Cleveland against Atlanta. He probably will strike out a couple times, but he definitely has some potential for a good hit. A couple other values you could use: Manuel Margot, Connor Joe, Dalton Varsho, Ahmad Rosario, Brendan Nemo, and Edward Olivares. All right, so let's look at our stacks here. So our stacks today are going to be Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Miami, Texas, LA Dodgers, and Baltimore. Those are the top overall stacks. And then my contrarian stacks are going to be Yankees, San Francisco, Toronto, Minnesota. And then I have some other stacks that are definitely in play. But you could also just use these guys as your kind of your baseline of what players that look decent from those teams. I wouldn't really mess with Chicago White Sox, Oakland, or Seattle too much today. But these Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Miami stacks all look really solid on this slate. I think Texas is a very interesting stack, but it's going to be hard to do with this prices. The Dodgers stack is super expensive. Baltimore actually is decent, but it's a little bit under the radar. For the Yankees, it's going to be hard to roster it and be super confident. I love San Francisco stack today. I think it's cheap and it helps there. Toronto looks interesting, and so Minnesota is also a dirt cheap stack as well, and lots of different ways you could go about it. So you could utilize these players in a lot of different ways, but this pretty much gives me all the players that I'm going to be considering through when it comes to making my lineups. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into pitching. So we have a pretty interesting set of pitchers today. This set of pitchers is kind of top heavy. We have some absolutely, our top one, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9 pitchers all have good strikeout rates and good upside in these matchups, and that's going to make it somewhat difficult to be contrarian against all these guys. But my favorite ones are Gallen and Burns, as they have the best matchups and they have the best strikeout rates for the most part outside of Sale, and they also will likely give up the least runs on the slate outside of Eflin at least. Now I do like Eflin a lot as well for Tampa Bay. The White Sox are absolutely terrible. The big concern here is his strikeout rate's not as good as the rest of the guys in this price range, but he's in a great spot. I do think most of the other guys are good GPP plays and good contrarian options. I do think that Gallen and Burns will both be very highly owned as a top overall pitcher, but we do have some value plays that we can utilize as value options against decent situations like Gill against Milwaukee or Musgrove against Philadelphia as a GPP play, and then over is a good Hail Mary play against the Angels. I also wanted to like uh, Bato against the St. Louis a little bit as a Hail Mary play, but that's very risky as his strikeout stuff is pretty low. So that's pretty much what I have for the slate. If you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to comment below, and have a nice day, guys. Hey, Podega, how are you? Baseball. Yeah, have a good one in Colorado, man.